darkness had once been the only world in which humans lived. They feared the night, its unseen eyes, its rustlings, its beasts' howls. At night they huddled together, trying to keep warm with their bodies. Their settlements were fragile, and life was short and brittle. And then, into this world, came a miracle. Prometheus, the titan who defied Zeus, brought them a spark hidden inside a reed. For the first time, people saw a flame that tore through the gloom. Fire blazed within the primal cave, and everything changed. At first, they stood spellbound, watching the tongues of flame dance. Every spark was magic, every crackle of a twig the voice of a new world. Some were afraid to approach, while others stretched trembling hands toward it. And when the warmth embraced their fingers, fear slowly gave way to hope. It was their first realization that the world might not only be hostile, but also kind, if they could learn to master it. Soon they discovered how to keep the fire alive, feeding it with branches, seeking dry grass, hiding embers under ash to rekindle them in the morning. Fire became their companion, and the night was no longer an endless terror. Now they could talk, laugh, and tell each other stories around the blaze. The first culture was being born, the first symbols of human unity. The flame transformed humanity from a helpless creature into a hunter. Now beasts feared the fire, and people understood they held a weapon in their hands. Hunts became more successful, prey more abundant, and life a little easier. Fire gave them the power to prepare food, and meat ceased to be tough and heavy on their stomachs. For the first time they tasted boiled and roasted meals, and their bodies grew stronger. Nourishment gave them more strength, and the tribe began to thrive. From the moment fire first blazed among humankind, a new era began. Fire became their protector, their teacher, their symbol of unity. Each hearth made them feel part of something greater. This was the beginning of civilization. And Prometheus, somewhere high on the Caucasus Mountains, chained in bonds, could only envision how humankind was, for the first time, stronger than the night. With each passing day, people began to understand that fire was not just a gift, it was the heart of their new life. At first, they used it only for protection and warmth, but soon the hearth became the center of every event. Fire was there when a child was born, when the dead were mourned, when the tribe shared its spoils and celebrated victories in the hunt. Around the fire, people began to sing, creating the first rhythms that pulsed in unison with their hearts. Here the first language of symbols was born. Children learned about the world through the flame. They saw how it grew, how it weakened without fuel, and they understood that life worked the same way. Fire became their first teacher of life and death. The elders, who knew how to rekindle embers, became the keepers of knowledge. Their names were remembered, their wisdom passed on to the next generations. Soon, fire gave rise to art. People began to paint on cave walls using charcoal and ochre, depicting hunting scenes, symbols of strength, and dreams. These drawings became the first writing, the imprint of the human soul. Firelight made the images come alive, dance in the glow. Thus culture was born, and it was culture that set humans apart from all other creatures on Earth. Thanks to fire, communities grew larger. Now people could gather in greater numbers, for the flame united them, giving a sense of safety and trust. Hierarchy appeared. Those who possessed knowledge of fire held a special place in the tribe. Fire became not only a practical tool but also a spiritual center. It gave birth to rituals, myths, and legends. People began to believe that the flame was the voice of the gods or the spirits of their ancestors, linking them to both heaven and earth. And so, from the tiny spark carried in a reed, an entire society was born. Though they did not yet know metal or writing, the fire of civilization was already burning in their hearts. After long wanderings, after leaving his mother behind, Phaethon set out on a journey that led him across lands, seas, and skies. His heart was filled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, a burning desire to prove to everyone that he was not just an ordinary youth but the son of Helios himself. On the other, fear and doubt, for he had heard that the road to the palace of the sun god was dangerous and full of trials. Phaethon walked through the steppes, where golden rays of dawn spilled across the horizon. He watched the sky change each day, revealing new colors, and thought, "If my father truly commands this light, then perhaps a part of this power also lives within me. He crossed deserts, where the sand scorched his feet, and dark forests, where the night wind whispered frightening tales. Yet nothing could stop him, for the desire to find the truth burned in his soul more fiercely than the rays of the sun. At last, before his eyes rose a majestic mountain, shining as if it were made of pure gold. This was the path to the palace of Helios, a place no mortal foot had ever tread. Phaethon felt his heart beating faster and faster. He stood before the gates, glowing with celestial radiance. Beyond them were his father, the truth, and the answer to all his doubts. When Phaethon entered the palace, he was struck by its incredible beauty. The walls gleamed with gold, the floor was paved with precious stones, and the ceiling shone as though all the stars of the night had gathered there. At the center of this magnificent hall sat Helios himself, radiant, majestic, surrounded by rays that streamed from his head like a crown of pure light. Phaethon fell to his knees. His eyes filled with tears. At last, he beheld the one he had heard about all his life. Helios looked upon the youth, and in his gaze there was something familiar. "Father," said Phaethon in a trembling voice, "I have come here to learn the truth. Am I truly your son?" Helios rose from his throne, and his light filled the entire hall. "Yes, my son," he declared solemnly, "you are blood of my blood, light of my light. I swear upon the sacred sticks that I speak nothing but the truth." Phaethon could scarcely believe his ears. His soul swelled with pride. Now he could return to the world of men and prove to all that he was no ordinary mortal. Yet at that very moment, a new thought crept into his heart. If he truly was the son of the sun, then should he not be able to command the fiery chariot that journeyed across the heavens each day? This desire grew stronger and stronger within him, and he did not yet know that it was the very wish that would lead him to tragedy. For several days, Phaethon remained in the palace of Helios. He watched as his father set out each morning on his journey across the heavens, as the golden horses lifted the chariot upward, and as light poured over the world. For everyone else, it was a daily miracle, but for Phaethon, it was a goal. His heart beat faster every time he saw his father grip the reins, commanding the very elements of flame and light. Phaethon began to feel that he, too, was capable of such a feat. It seemed to him that if he was truly the son of the sun, then fire coursed through his veins as well, and he had the right to prove it. "Father," he said one day, "you have given me life and light, but grant me also proof for the people. Let me drive your chariot for a single day." His voice was filled with resolve, but in Helios's heart, fear awoke. He knew that even the immortal gods trembled before those fiery steeds, for they obeyed no one but their master. Their very names thundered with power: Pyrrhos, Phaethon, Eos, and Phlegon. Each carried within it the untamed force of fire, and only Helios could hold them in check. "My son," he answered, "I swore upon the sticks to fulfill whatever you desire. But I beg you, do not ask this. It is too dangerous even for me. You cannot imagine the force you would face. It could consume you before you even rose into the sky." But in Phaethon's heart there was no fear left. There burned only pride and the desire to prove himself as the true son of the sun. He stubbornly repeated, "I want this. Give me the chance. Let me drive the chariot for just one day." Helios felt the oath upon the sticks binding him. He could no longer refuse. His soul filled with dread, for he understood this day would become a trial not only for Phaethon, but for the entire world. Dawn had come. The sky was still dark, but on the horizon the first glimmers of day appeared. Phaethon stood before the chariot, which shone as though forged from pure fire and gold. Its wheels were wrought of celestial flame, and its axle gleamed like lightning. This was no mere chariot. It was the very symbol of cosmic order, the vessel that each day carried light and life to the earth. The horses struck their hooves against the marble floor, scattering sparks. Their manes blazed with fire. They neighed like rolling thunder, and even the gods themselves feared to approach them. Only Helios could command such a force. But today, he was to place the reins into the hands of his son. Helios stepped toward Phaethon. His gaze was heavy yet tender. "My son," he said, "hold the reins firmly, but do not jerk them. Do not climb too high, the heavens will burn with heat. Do not descend too low, the earth will be scorched. And remember, the horses heed no one but me. You must remain calm, even when they try to break free." Phaethon nodded. His heart pounded as if it would burst from his chest. He felt power and fear clashing within him. He seized the golden reins, and in that very instant the chariot shuddered. The horses neighed even louder, sensing that another now held command. Helios looked upon his son one last time. His eyes shone with light, but within them also stirred the shadow of foreboding. "May the gods be merciful to you," he said. "I can change nothing now." Then the fiery steeds surged forward, scattering sparks, and the sun's chariot rose into the heavens under the hand of the young Phaethon. As the chariot tore itself free from the marble platform of Helios' palace, the world itself seemed to tremble. Phaethon felt his body sway beneath the sheer force of speed. Torrents of fire burst from the hooves of the steeds, their cries split the heavens, and it seemed as though the very element of light refused to obey an untested hand. At first, it seemed like triumph. Phaethon looked down and saw the night's darkness retreating. The earth below slowly bathed in golden brilliance. People lifted their faces to the sky, marveling at the radiant dawn, whispering, "It is the son of the sun who drives the chariot." At that moment, the youth's heart swelled with pride. He thought, "Now all know I am truly the son of Helios. No one will ever dare to scorn me again." But within a heartbeat he understood, the power he had seized was never meant for a mortal. The horses sensed the faltering grip of their driver and began to thrash. They veered wildly, and the chariot lurched, leaving a blazing trail in its wake. The heavens quaked, and the stars, not yet faded, scattered before the surging heat. Phaethon trembled, straining to clutch the reins. For an instant he believed he might master them, but deep within, fear had already taken root. He knew the steeds did not recognize him as their lord, and that with each passing second his fate hung by a thread. The sky blazed brighter and brighter. Phaethon struggled to hold the reins, but the harder he pulled, the wilder the horses became. They tore free from the steady path Helios had always guided them along, careening recklessly, first soaring upward, then plunging down in chaos. At first they climbed too high. The flames licked at the dome of heaven, and even the goddesses of the constellations shrieked in terror. The stars themselves trembled, as though the very fabric of the heavens might ignite. Then the steeds plunged downward. The chariot hurtled toward the earth. Mountains began to melt from the scorching heat, rivers boiled, forests turned to ash. Humanity fled in panic, crying out as the burning sun seemed to descend upon them. Phaethon screamed, trying to restrain the reins, but the fire seared his hands. The strength he had once felt from the flames was gone. Now there was only fear, raw, consuming, and the realization that he was losing all control. The chariot no longer obeyed him, and the world itself slid toward ruin. On Olympus, the gods gazed down in horror. They knew that if this madness continued, the earth itself would be consumed in fire, all because of one reckless youth. The earth could no longer endure the fire. Her very breast split under the searing heat, rivers boiled, seas evaporated, and fish perished upon the surface. Fields cracked and crumbled into wastelands, trees ignited, and columns of smoke curled upward toward the heavens. People fell to their knees, praying to the gods, screaming in despair. Mothers clutched their children in desperation, while warriors who had never known fear now begged the skies for mercy. All understood, this was no ordinary sun, but a catastrophe threatening to erase the world. Even Gaia herself, the Mother Earth, lifted her voice to Olympus. She pleaded with Zeus, "Lord of thunder, save me. Save the people, save the whole earth. For if nothing is done, I shall burn to ashes." Her cry pierced the heavens, and even the thunderer trembled. He saw that to remain idle would mean the end of all creation. And the cause of it all was a youth who could not bear the weight of divine power. Zeus could wait no longer. His eyes blazed with fury as he raised the thunderbolt, the most fearsome weapon of the heavens. In that moment, silence fell upon Olympus. The gods froze, knowing the decisive instant was at hand. Phaethon saw him. For a heartbeat, the youth felt the earth and sky suspended in expectation. He longed to cry out, "I only wish to prove that I am the son of the sun." But his voice was swallowed by the roar of the flames. The horses raged, the chariot lurched wildly, and there was no hope of stopping it. The thunderbolt of Zeus split the sky. It struck the chariot, and the fire scattered into 1,000 sparks. With a terrible neigh, the horses vanished into the clouds, and Phaethon was torn from his seat. His body burned as he tumbled through the heavens. Earth and sky shuddered once more, this time with the blow of fate. In an instant, the chaos began to subside. The flames faded, the seas cooled, the mountains ceased to melt. The world was spared, but the price was the death of the son of Helios. Phaethon plummeted through the sky, his fall long and agonizing. Fire engulfed his body, the flames seeming to become a part of him. The heavens watched him like a tragic star in descent. He stretched out his arms as though to seize the clouds, but they dissolved through his fingers. The birds that still lingered in the sky fled from him as if from a curse. The earth below rushed closer with dreadful speed. In every valley, in every city, people looked upward and saw the fiery figure falling, a sign of the gods' wrath. No one could turn away. It was not merely the fall of a youth, but the fall of a dream, the yearning of mortals to touch the divine, to prove their worth. For a fleeting instant, hope still glimmered in his eyes, but it faded with his final breath. His body struck the earth by the river Eridanus, and the ground quaked as though in mourning. Smoke and flame rose into the sky, and at the place of his fall a blackened scar remained. For generations, people pointed to it and whispered, "Here lies the son of the sun." When the news of Phaethon's death spread across the world, none suffered more than his sisters, the Heliades. They hurried to the river Eridanus, where smoke still lingered from the fall. When they saw their brother's charred body, they collapsed to their knees, covering their faces with their hands. Their cries tore through the silence, and their tears fell upon the blackened earth. 4 days and nights they wept, never leaving the place. Each tear seemed as precious as a pearl, yet as heavy as stone. Those who passed by did not dare to speak, for they knew this was grief beyond the reach of words. The gods, moved by their sorrow, chose to make their mourning eternal and beautiful. Their bodies began to harden, their arms and legs turning into branches, their hair into green leaves, and their tears into clear resin. Thus the sisters of Phaethon became poplars, standing by the river and bowing over its waters. And every drop of resin that fell from their trunks hardened in the sun, becoming amber. People believed that this amber was the crystallized tears of the sisters for Phaethon, and that even across the ages their sorrow remains with us. When Phaethon's mother, Clymene, learned of her son's death, her heart was torn apart with despair. She walked along endless roads until she reached the river Eridanus, where her daughters had already been transformed into trees. Seeing them, she stretched out her arms, but touched only the cold bark that still seemed to hold the warmth of past embraces. She called them by name, yet no answer came, only the rustle of leaves. In those sounds lingered a sorrowful, "We are here," but it only deepened her anguish. Clymene fell to her knees, touching the blackened earth where her son had burned, and prayed to the gods for mercy. She begged them to turn back time, to let her son once more be the dreaming youth he had been, but the gods remained unmoved. For the story of Phaethon was meant to serve as a warning to humankind. Not everything that shines belongs to mortals. Clymene's tears mingled with the waters of the river, and people said that even the waves of the Eridanus grew bitter from her weeping. Her grief was so deep that the nymphs themselves rose from the water to look upon the woman who had lost everything. And each of them bowed her head in silence, acknowledging the greatness of her sorrow. But not all looked upon the tragedy with pity. Zeus, who had struck Phaethon down with his lightning bolt, watched with cold majesty. To him, this act was a necessity, otherwise, the world would have burned in the fire of a reckless youth. Yet even he could not escape judgment. Many among mortals asked, was such a harsh punishment truly required? Could he not have chosen a gentler way? But the ruler of Olympus answered only with silence and storms. For he saw further than humankind. He knew that mortal pride could shake the very foundations of the world. Zeus gazed sternly upon the earth, his eyes flashing like fresh lightning. His grandeur seemed unreachable, his decision final. He reminded all that it is the gods who set the limits, and whoever dares to break them will meet with punishment. And yet, even amid the thunder and flashes of the storm, in the deepest corners of his soul lingered a spark of sorrow. For Phaethon had been but a youth who wished to prove his lineage, to be worthy of the sun's son. That desire was one even the mightiest god could understand, but the law of the cosmos stood stronger than compassion. Helios, the sun god who each day bathed the world in his light, felt powerless for the first time in eternity when he learned of his son's death. His golden chariot stood still, the horses bowed their heads, as if they too understood the tragedy. Helios wept. His tears resembled fiery sparks that fell from the heavens and dissolved into the clouds. In those moments, even the sun itself dimmed, veiled by a haze of sorrow. The earth grew silent, sensing that the heavenly light-bearer grieved along with the world. He reproached himself, "Why did I allow him to climb into the chariot? Why was I not firmer in my refusal?" His heart was torn between his love for his son and his duty to humankind. He was both father and God, and it was this duality that made his suffering unbearable. They say that on that day Helios hesitated, unsure if he should rise into the sky. Only Zeus's command compelled him to take his place once more in the fiery chariot and carry the sun onward. But from that time on, within every dawn light, one can see not only warmth, but also the sorrow lingering in a father's eyes. The death of Phaethon became a myth passed down from generation to generation. People looked to the sky and remembered the youth who wanted to prove his divinity but paid the highest price. Along the river Eridan, the trees, Phaethon's sisters, always rustled, remaining eternal guardians of his memory. Their weeping, flowing from their bark as resin, became a symbol of human sorrow. When the sun rose over the horizon, people would say, "There goes Helios driving his chariot, but in his heart, pain still dwells." And when thunder tore the heavens, they recalled the stern judgment of Zeus. This story taught that excessive pride and the desire to surpass the gods led only to ruin. Yet it also carried another meaning, about a father's love, the devotion of sisters, and the truth that even gods could feel loss as deeply as mortals. Phaethon became a symbol of youthful courage and recklessness, an example that dreams without wisdom can lead to tragedy. But he also left behind light. For every time we look at the sun, we remember his name,